Thank you, Langholff. That was very nice. And you'll find my adventures similar and different. I would like to share some of the realizations from my spiritual journey and how they were actualized in my life. I'm very grateful for the unique position that my parents gave me as a foundation for my spirituality. My father was a research scientist in entomology at the UW-Madison. He'd been raised in the Methodist Church, but when the teachers could not answer his questions, he became agnostic. In 1952, he came down with polio. And while he was very sick in the hospital, he was aware of a great presence surrounding him, and he saw written on the wall the words, "You will live." After this experience, which he could only describe as love, he became very involved then in the church and in the dialogue between science and religion. My mother had grown up in the Lutheran Church and had drifted away in her faith. During World War II, she had to be operated on to remove her appendix. And as she was going under the ether, she had a vision of Jesus saying, "Isabel, won't you believe in me?" Because of my mother's experience and my parents' background, they became very active members of a liberal Lutheran church. As a result of their honest and inquiring approach to the Bible and Christian faith, I never felt the need to reject or rebel against Christianity. Now, it doesn't mean I'm still a Christian per se, but I shifted. I think that part of the spiritual process is an undoing. My journey led me in a quiet shift that allowed me to, quote, not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There was much wisdom that Jesus had to offer, and I always loved the glorious music that came from Christianity, the organ, the choirs, which I still consider to be one of Christianity's greatest gifts to humanity. How did I end up at the UU? I owe part of that to my parents as well. When I was in high school, my parents decided to spend the summer attending different churches. So we went to a Catholic Mass. We went to the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Pentecostals, and others. And it was a real education. There were so many similarities to our Lutheran service that any small differences seemed very minor. Later on in life, during my travels, and I've traveled extensively, I was able to attend a Hindu temple ceremony, a Buddhist ceremony, Wiccan pagan events, a Jewish synagogue service on Shabbat, a Quaker service, and others, including the UU. Again, what struck me was what they had in common: the Golden Rule and the reverence for the divine. A little over a year ago, I attended the Parliament of World Religions in Salt Lake City, a wonderful experience full of great energy and peace. This was the leading edge of all religions, not the conservative end. Other influence that helped me in my quiet shift came from reading the writings of Karen Armstrong. And if you haven't read any Karen Armstrong, I highly recommend her. She's just excellent. And particularly for me, The Gospel According to Woman, which she wrote right after she came out of the convent. So she had some stuff to get off her chest. Well, that was exactly some of the stuff I wanted to know. And another writer who really had a big influence was J. Krishnamurti, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with his writings, but he's from India. He's passed away. Then I became a student in the Course in Miracles around 1980. I feel that the Course was very instrumental in changing my vision. And I'll give you an example. I noticed that bodily appearances no longer affected me. I was able to see deeper and beyond the surface of old age, of skin color, of beauty, ugliness, deformity. It didn't matter. Appearances were no longer important. And it was a strange experience. I mean, usually I know when I was younger that would affect me, but now it doesn't. And I attributed it to the Course. I will always be a student in the Course in Miracles. In fact, I have to tell you, it was my go-to after the November election results. On my journey, I've come to the realization also of the underlying energy that is in us and in everything around us. A big part of that process was the result of undertaking a vision quest. In 1994, I traveled out to Montana for a vision quest with, under the guidance, I should say, of Brook Medicine Eagle. On a large ranch in the Rocky Mountains, I found a site in a natural circle of large stones. At first, I had to make peace with the ants that lived there, because when I deposited my body in this area, the guard ants all came rushing out. Get rid of this creature, whatever it is. They're brave, I'll tell you. Well, then the ants came to terms with my going to be there, because I was going to be there a while, and so then they just went around me. And it was a beautiful sight with a view of the sunsets, etc. Well, when it was time to end the quest, there was a call to come in, and at this point, nothing had occurred out of the ordinary. I mean, it was a beautiful setting, etc. So as I sat in my circle coming to terms with that fact, I noticed an image of a Native American on the surface of one of the rocks. Now, this was not carved, but just naturally occurring, just like seeing images in clouds. Then I noticed what looked like a left footprint in the rock next to this image. So out of curiosity, I moved closer to the rock, removed my shoe and sock, and placed my foot on the depression. It fit. As I was marveling at this, I felt a surge of energy come up my leg. I knew it was not my own energy circulating, but rather the energy from the rock or the earth. And my knee was bent, so the energy stayed in the lower leg. My leg, by the way, was sore for days after that. And that evening after the quest, we stayed in a yurt. And as I was drifting into sleep, I saw a mandala in the circular skylight at the top of the yurt, and it was endlessly dividing with curved lines. It was magnificent. And I decided that that was kind of an affirmation of what I'd experienced and was my vision. Prior to the vision quest, I had begun to learn Tai Chi, and I'd also spent a few years learning and practicing yoga. But this experience of the energy flowing into my leg opened up new levels of awareness. And I would learn then and practice some Qigong, which I think directs the energy very nicely. Another interesting aspect into tuning into energy at different places is that you can go to places and feel that energy, like at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, where there are a lot of Jewish people pouring energy into that wall. So then if you go up and you put your hands on that wall and you tune into it, the energy's there. Temples in Egypt, standing stones in Scotland, ancient trees in England, and even, I have to say, you don't have to travel far, the rocks at Natural Bridge State Park in Wisconsin. Had a wonderful experience from those rocks. Over the years, I found that if I needed help, I had to ask the universe out loud to help me. Otherwise, it seemed that the universe would not interfere. Having asked for help, it was then important to pay attention to nudges, guidance, like a still small voice within, or a gut level feeling. Or it could be guidance that came in a dream, or on one occasion, a voice. Or the guidance may come from another person or a book, but you have to be open and looking. Of course, nudges can come even when I have not asked for help. I have found it a mistake over the course of my years to ignore an inner nudge. One time, and I'll give you an example, one time years ago I was walking home after teaching school. It was snowing and the snow was accumulating. And as I walked down the sidewalk, I came across a boy with his bike on an afternoon newspaper route. He had fallen, and his newspapers were strewn all over the sidewalk in the snow. I felt a nudge to stop and help him gather his newspapers, but I didn't. And I don't remember if I was in a hurry or if I reasoned that he would soon have them gathered and be on his way. But to this day, I regret not having stopped to help. It would have only taken a minute or so, And this became a lesson to me to try to live without regret. That means paying attention, doing your best, and also by following inner nudges, I think you avoid the universe having to knock you over the head to get attention. Because sometimes I have a feeling there's someone there going, hey, you know, just like this. Well, if you pay attention to that, then that avoids having to be hit over the head. That's been my experience. Now, my final piece of wisdom to pass over to you, or along to you, came from my teaching physical education for years at the high school. Before class, I would sometimes have a student stop at the office wondering if she could be excused from dressing for class. Then she would offer some sort of reason, like not feeling well. Sometimes I did excuse them, but usually it seemed like the main barrier was putting on the gym suit. I'm sure you can all remember that. So I would say, well, dress and do what you can. Well, the student would usually look disappointed, but would show up for class dressed in a gym suit. In most cases, the student would end up participating. And if they did sit out, then I knew they really weren't feeling too good that day. So my quote is, dress and do what you can, became my standard line. I could even imagine having had a parrot sitting on my shoulder, that they would come in with some excuse and then I'd just nudge the parrot and say, rock, dress and do what you can. I mean, I said that a lot. Since then, I have realized that this is actually a good approach to life. Individually, we can't save the world, but you can dress and do what you can. So thank you.